Hello, that's me again. Today is May 26th. It is Friday. Happy Friday, everybody. And let's start a little bit with some news. And, I don't like news and commenting on them. But let's first debunk the baloney which Ukrainian propaganda and obviously American mainstream media was spreading all day yesterday. And this is about the situation with the medium's intelligence collection vessel, Ivan Hurs, which was attacked by three drones. And we're talking about drones, obviously, which are provided most likely by Great Britain and United States, and all targeting was provided by NATO, well, United States primarily so. But here it is, as already even Kommersant, which is a very famous pro-Western, so-called liberal and very anti-Russian publication, even they admit that the Ivan Hurs, which was attacked by three drones, has returned in Sevastopol calmly, no damage, and it's ready for the fulfillment of the new tasks. And this is Kommersant, no less. So even they report this. That means that obviously what everybody saw and was spread by UK propaganda was obviously some kind of the CGI. My gosh, we live in the 21st century, guys, and we live in the times of I really am reluctant calling it the artificial intellect. It's not really artificial intellect, but you can fake pretty much any kind of video nowadays today. So, and yeah, that's what they were spreading around yesterday, but we know that, yeah, everything is fine. Hurs indeed sunk all three of them, and it's back in Sevastopol on its own power and no damage. So this is one thing. And of course we have the situation with, the just desperate necessity of Washington and obviously whatever is left of Ukraine to cover up and redirect attention of the international community away from the fall of Bakhmut, nowadays Artyomovsk. But again, you cannot just do that. I mean, the only wars United States used to be good at, I'm not talking about real wars. United States loses all its wars. But it was PR. It was propaganda. Basically, it was, throwing the, sand into the eyes of people, smoke and mirrors. But even though today, with the spread of the mass media, and especially digital media, you can see yourself, even here, this PR is really really crude, and it's been debunked, most of it, really fast. But of course, this is not just that. The same as Mr. Lavrov stating today about and Russian Foreign Ministry issuing the protest to American diplomatic mission in Moscow about Jake Sullivan basically suggesting to attack Russia. They still do not understand what they are dealing with. And Mr. Lavrov, speaking to Russia One, the main Russian TV network, he stated today, you can look it up, it's very simple. He said the United States lives still in delusion that the Atlantic Ocean is some kind of moat and it protects the United States. It does not. And this is what I need to stress again. It used to be that the ocean was the obstacle. Today, it's actually quite opposite. And ocean is the best way to deliver any kind of the strike means towards the, let's say in this particular case, America proper, the continental United States, by means of all kinds of carriers, be them ships, or of course we're talking about submarines. And I'm not talking about strategic missile submarines, which are boomers, which in Russia they operate from the bastions, they're extremely well guarded, and they can launch pretty much on their, minute notice. And no, we're talking about other types of delivery, for example, of the cruise missiles, and as you know, most of the Russian nuclear-powered submarines are carriers of all kinds, a variety of the cruise missiles, including long-range, obviously, 3 M14 calibers, and the United States simply has no air defense to really stop a serious salvo. And of course, all those missiles are nuclear-tipped, if they need be. they could be conventional. So in this particular case, explaining this to the average American politician is a waste of time. They have no grasp of it, and I am on record the same as actually General Latif. He is PhD in physics, and he served in DARPA for 20 years, and I can reiterate or quote him yet again. Most of what American political public and political top, including all those senators, congressmen, and politicians in the administration, know about war, they know from the entertainment industry. This is direct quote. They know it from the Hollywood. So that is why they don't understand that we live in the 21st century, not in the 19th or 18th. And that brings us also to the fact that when you look at the sheer basically demonstration of the power, this thing actually should terrify many in Washington. And and again, I wrote 3 books on that, okay? My blog for 9 years says the same thing. Now, yesterday, Mr. Putin says that Eurasian countries need own rating system. The Eurasian Economic Union member states should establish a rating agency to provide adequate assessment tools for the region's growing economic activity. And basically the note here is that currently the market for international credit ratings is dominated by 3 US-based agencies: Moody's Investor Services, Standard & Poor's, and Fitch Group. Countries outside the West have accused them of economic and political bias when it comes to assessing their markets. Oh, it's not just the bias, and I am on record that actually we're dealing here with the complete baloney. This is cooking of books, straightforward. There is absolutely no substance to what those people report on economy, and that is why they do not understand, for example, because economy is in the foundation of the modern warfare, they don't understand what is happening in Ukraine, many of them. I'm talking about people like this Standard Poor's and what have you. Those are boys and girls with the MBAs or some other finance degrees, which nothing wrong with that, make no mistake. But the problem is they get into the so-called markets, and the only thing they can do is count pennies. They sit and count some money, especially in terms of expressed in terms of the US dollar. This doesn't reflect on real economies whatsoever. I already presented once this example. It's well documented. Russians managed for $1 billion to build 8 state-of-the-art Boreas and Boreas-A class strategic missile submarines, when actually the average hull of sometime in 30s, they still not ready. It's not going to be ready for many years, for several, at least 5, 6. The Columbia strategic missile submarine for the US Navy, its single hull is more than $9 billion. There you go. How do you judge economy like this? And you cannot explain this to Standard & Poor's, that Russia produces the same amount of steel, while China produces like 12 times amount of steel, and economically dwarfs the United States. But you know what? Mr. Putin is on record now that it's time to cut BS pretty much and start dealing with the real economies and real money, not some kind of the, fake thin air zeros in some kind of computer, which modern US dollar is. And that brings us to other things. So obviously there is some kind of issue of the collective madness going on in the United States, and it is going on all across the against the background of the fall of the Bakhmut Artyomovsk, Russians basically annihilating listen, I'm also human. I understand the whole tragedy which is happening there. But we're talking about, as I already stated, hundreds of thousands of casualties on Ukrainian side. So now there is a collective madness which strikes all those military experts. Yeah, you listen to those American military experts and you begin to doubt what I already stated, that they have appropriate military education, appropriate experience in warfare. And we will start with, obviously, with the guy from the West Point. He's some captain, and he wrote, you can go there and look up this article. It is absolute delirium. But look what he builds his article about. The Captain Mitchell from the Modern War Institute from West Point, and he is the guy who has degree in international relations or something like that, and he evidently was dealing with some kind of air defense issues. I don't know how you can do that, but hey, what do I know? And look at this, hypersonic hype, Russia Kinzhal missiles and the lessons for air defense. And he starts it with absolute baloney. He builds his argument that the May 4 interception of Russian Kinzhal hypersonic missile by one of Ukraine's Patriot air defense missile system in Kyiv has caused a significant stir into the international missile defense community. So he is lying because, first, he is using absolutely fake data, absolute fake news from the Ukrainian side, which of course have been debunked completely by real international missile community. And then of course this whole piece of his is just absolute butthurt. For some reason he said that Kinzhal will go into the dustbin of history, the same as, for example, BMPT Terminator. I don't know why he decided this. I mean, I understand sore losers and I understand butthurt, but when you have people who build their thesis, and this is the guy who teaches in the West Point, they build around fake news, debunked completely, and he's talking about that, you know what, and he's complaining that Patriot PAC-3, which was annihilated in Ukraine, was somehow attacked by the variety of means. I have news for this guy. Yes, this is what you do. This is called SIAT, real SIAT. It's suppression of the enemy air defense. And Kinzhal was merely basically cherry on the top, and which blew out the radar and whatever, 5 launchers there. And if he doesn't understand this, I don't know what he's teaching in the West Point. But if this wasn't bad enough, and this absolute delirium, which is, again, I already stated, when you based anything on the fake news, on a fake data and a fake event, what do you expect? What kind of lessons you learn? You learn absolutely nothing. But if this hasn't been enough, here's another specimen. This one is, unlike this Captain Mitchell, he's Brigadier General. And if anything else, he was the military attaché to Moscow. Well, we'll discuss it just a little bit later here. In May 17th, he writes in basically the piece of the media called Russia Matters, which is Harvard Kennedy School and Belfer Center for Science and International Affairs. I want to point immediately, anybody who graduated Harvard Kennedy School and especially has any kind of association for the Belfer Center for Science and International Affairs, they have to use their background as disqualifying feature, because those people are absolutely uneducated and they are uncultured. They lack basic understanding of the world. They lack basic understanding of the warfare. And here's the guy. Here's the guy. His name is Brigadier General Kevin Ryan, and he writes about why Putin will use nuclear weapons in Ukraine. And guess what? He again goes into all those listings of the absolute baloney and debunked information from Ukrainian propaganda. This is what they do. This is what actually American Ivy League teaches its graduates. That is why they're so dumb. And then, of course, the guy, this Brigadier General, goes and tries to justify why it is, you know, inevitable that Putin will actually use nuclear weapons. First, he refers to Dmitry Trener, who is who used to be the colonel in the Carnegie Foundation in Moscow, Carnegie Moscow Center. That's already effectively disqualifies anything what this guy writes, because Dmitry Trener would know basically, you know what, and from Shainola, because he was the colonel, which is the humanitarian university, which is basically, he was the military translator by trade, by his background. But look at this. He writes, this Mr. Brigadier General, that Putin has taken these increasingly threatening steps in the belief that NATO and West, in particular the United States, are not listening to him as he proclaims Russia's demands on the international stage. Well, Putin does not believe in it. The whole Russia knows it, and I don't know what this general tries to push here. But in 2018, when Putin unveiled a bevy of new nuclear weapons, he warned, "You will listen to us now. 4 years later, his invasion of Ukraine was a wake-up call for those in the West who are still not listening. Good, good. I hope so that he is right, but evidently he is not. There are a bunch of morons who are running the United States into the ground, and they don't listen anything, especially the fact that they have zero expertise in warfare, and America doesn't do strategy well at all. And for example, he continues to repeat the bunch of the garbage which is delivered into this Belfer Center by, guess what, all those Carnegie Endowment pro-Western liberals who continue to, you know, pull finger of those stupid people there. And for example, he reads that for Putin, whose regime is at risk, in my view, continue to threaten tactical nuclear attack on Ukraine without doing it carries perhaps as much risk as doing it. It's just absolute delirium. First, Putin regime, so to speak, is not at risk. Vladimir Putin has the support of more than 80% of the Russian population, and this is beyond basically wildest dreams of any American or Western politician. So basically, Mr. General lies. Plain and simple. He uses cherry picking some kind of the data which is provided to all those Belfer centers, to all those international, intel community in the United States by people who would tell them what they want to hear, because all those Russian and Ukrainian scholars, so to speak, their sinecures depend on that. They live on grants, and in order for them to get that, they need to constantly spread this baloney about Putin regime is about to collapse and Russia being basically beaten on the battlefield. But then, of course, he continues with this, Mr. Ryan. Trigger for nuclear use, and he continues, most likely it will be the inability of Russian military to escalate the war by conventional means when Putin demands. For example, if Ukrainian offensive threatens the loss of Crimea or the provinces that from the land bridge to it, Putin would demand an escalation on the fighting to prevent that loss. Mr. Kevin Ryan, for all his, and I will show you his CV, for all his military background, evidently has issues with understanding the balance of power and required force, how it is calculated, and that is why everything we talk about this counter-offensive or offensive, anybody who believes that Ukraine can cut the land bridge, they have to check their head. And I'm talking about serious, good-level psychiatrists, because those people are absolutely delusional. But here it is. He begins to guess who he brings into this. He brings some, like former FSB officer Igor Girkin, openly criticized the senior military leadership and even Putin. That criticism may be morphing into opposition, forcing Putin to consider escalating his war before his conventional forces are ready. This is a complete delirium by Ryan, and especially the guy who was a military attaché. They do grow them dumb. First, Mr. Girkin, also known as Strelkov, never was any officer. He was an NCO. He has background in history, and he was a reconstructor. He was playing roles in reconstructing the military. The guy is a joke. And if Mr. Ryan doesn't understand that, let alone to take talking about that he was an FSB officer, Mr. Ryan, who evidently was as the defense attaché to Moscow, should start learning about Russia, because evidently he has no clue. The same as he doesn't understand how the mobilization policy and the mobilization apparatus works in Russia. And when you look at this guy, you begin to ask a question: what the hell? How this guy even ended there? And here's, for example, his CV. This is his CV. He is Brigadier General, and as you can see yourself, he is senior National War College, senior fellow at Harvard Belfer Center. No wonder when you look at the American diplomacy, which is like absolute disaster. Director, Defense and Intel Projects. Then we go to his other part of his CV, and of course he writes about his Brigadier General, and he actually graduated, he was defense attaché to Moscow in 2005. prior to 2005. And he actually graduated West Point in 1976 in the time of a complete demoralization and actually situation with the United States Army, which was facing the consequences of Vietnam. And I don't know what you could learn at that time, and evidently, no matter how he was prepared, evidently he didn't understand what he was facing in Moscow in 2005 when he was actually there as an attaché, military attaché, because at that time he was still dealing with what was left of the Soviet army. He didn't understand what kind of the reforms have been already constituted at that time. And of course, most of what he was getting in his communications, and let's face it, all military attaches are by default intelligence officers, and some of them, I mean, openly say doing the open source intelligence, others are undercover. They do observe, they collect information. And in 2005, 2003, while he was in Moscow, 2004, the only information about Russia and armed forces and history he could get was from that time primarily pro-Western liberals who hated Russia and who are now actually the tiny minority in Russia and are actually the butt of the jokes. But these were the people, and they still continue to be, who are essentially not dissidents. Most of those people, they were and still are in the business of saying to their masters what they wanted to hear. And that is why actually Russians are openly now mocking American intelligence community, because evidently it doesn't understand what is going out there. Then don't listen to me. Listen to Colonel Macgregor, listen to Philip Giraldi, listen to Larry Johnson, listen to all those CIA and military guys who really have integrity, who really have the critical thinking and experience. They do not know what is going on out there. And the question is not only pathetic academic level of those people who go out from all those Balfour schools of government and diplomacy and what have you. When you have Victoria Nuland or late Madeleine Albright as the examples for their diplomacy, what do you expect? And Mr. Ryan, oh my gosh, if he was the chief of staff on some, or the deputy chief of staff or whatever he was, I mean, what kind of military education he has? He evidently doesn't understand how the balance of military power is formed, how the modern warfare, combined arms warfare, is fought, how the strategies are developed, how they are implemented, how they trickle down on the operational and eventually tactical level. And when people say that and bring into the basically conversation the officer who he never was, Mr. Strelkov, Mr. Girkin, he is one of the most, first he has the psychiatric issues to start with, and secondly, the guy is a complete moron. I mean, his forecasts about Russia and NATO are just laughable, because he doesn't have real serious academic military background. He never graduated any military academy, and yet here we are. And yet we get those people who continue to spread this baloney, and it is primarily precipitated by the humiliation of American weapon systems, their inability to intercept anything, and seeing how they are being destroyed. And that brings us to this F-16 issue, which is nauseating now. Now suddenly, Mr. Milley, no less, he says that F-16s won't be a magic weapon for Ukraine. Milley warns. This is from Politico, guys. Yesterday. Okay, well, we know that. Well, you know what? People who have a serious military background, they can calculate. They can do the basically assessment, first tier assessment. So look at this. Then he says, the Russians have 1,000 fourth-generation fighters, Joint Chiefs Chair General Mark Milley told reporters at the Pentagon following a virtual meeting of the multinational Ukraine Defense Contact Group. If you're going to contest Russia in the air, you're going to need a substantial amount of fourth and fifth generation fighters. So you look at the cost curve and do the analysis. The smarter thing to have done is exactly what we did do, which is provide a significant amount of integrated air defenses to cover the battle space and deny the Russian airspace. Yes, we already saw how this air defense works and how it is being obliterated. And as I already stated, the outcry, the descent into the collective madness from the military to political top in the United States is pronounced. You can see it, you can feel it, it's tangible. It is so thick, you can cut it with the knife. And so when you look at this, it's just, my gosh, I understand people lose. I mean, come on. You know what? I went through the collapse of the Soviet Union. I went through the humiliation of Russia in the 1990s. And guess what? You go out and say, yeah, you know what? We, screwed it up in Russia. And there was no just, constant blaming of the America or anything. Very many people in Russia stated that we have to look in the mirror. And guess what? They did, because they took the responsibility for what has been done to the country. And everything started to develop from there. In the United States, it is impossible. Because these are people like this Brigadier General or Mr. Milley, who still believe that, Milley probably doesn't believe. He does have stuff. There are many competent people who do calculate, and they say that, yeah, F-16 is just sitting duck, and no matter how many you throw at them, they will be all obliterated. Their task only is to take off, launch some kind of missiles which the United States will provide, or Great Britain, and then be done, because they will be shut down or annihilated on the ground. And you can sense this they're coming to grips with the reality, but still these articles by those so-called American military professionals, goodness gracious, have they any respect to themselves? Can they actually admit some things which are so obvious? And the whole world looks at them, that even Fiona Hill, former big honcho in the national security team in Obama administration, she admitted that actually there is basically uprising all over the world, which was spurred by Russia. Absolutely. Absolutely. And now we begin to understand that. And that brings us to the last item for today's menu, apart from those nauseating talks about F-16s and things of this nature. Suddenly we have this. The General Sami Nurmi, the Finnish General Sami Nurmi yesterday, and speaking to the interview to the Helsingin Sanomat, he decried the fact that Russia basically quit the two-side agreement about additional measures of the assessment of the military power on both sides. Before that, Russians and Finns were basically visiting each other, cross-border, were reviewing their armed forces, making sure that everything is fine, that nobody has any aggressive posture towards each other. Well, guess what? Russia quit this, the same as Putin saying now that we have to review actually our participation in many international organizations and agreements. And obviously, Sami Nurmi, this Brigadier General of Finnish Armed Forces, he decries it because he says we are the, we are the neighbors. We have to have some kind of relations and all that. But you know what? Finland is a NATO member. And there are consequences, and it seems like, with all my sympathy for the position of General Nurmi, that, you know what, you have to live with the consequences, you have to understand there is a price to pay. It was really great between Finland and Russia, and you remember, Finns are going to Russian side to get gas, and Russians were buying property in Finland. It was excellent, shopping, mutual shopping, and so just normal thing what the neighbors do. But Finland decided to become a part of NATO. And nobody buys this BS that there will be no American installation in Finland. There will be. And of course, Russia, that is why Russia revived the Leningrad military district, which of course will have all necessary equipment and power to make sure that no stupidity is coming from the Finnish side. But then again, Finland wanted NATO. Russia said, okay, you wanted NATO? It's over with this mutual agreement, and bye-bye. What do you expect? And this is what I was trying to convey today, that there are consequences for everything. You cannot just do stupid thing and not expect some kind of the fallout. We are looking at this fallout happening as I speak to you, and it is unprecedented. Many people, like this proverbial frog in the slowly boiling water, they don't understand we are living through the change, geopolitical change, which makes even collapse of the Soviet Union, I mean, not that significant compared to what we're going through. We are looking at that complete implosion of the Western civilization, and it just started economically from Germany, who is officially in recession. But then again, what's the big deal? We know Germany will be fully deindustrialized, and it's going to be, as Russians today say, Marshall Plan, 180 degrees. What do you expect? Germany will be deindustrialized, and we can see already of the economic dynamics there. And the same goes for Europe. Europe made her own choices. Nobody, you know what, Russia didn't do anything, to convince them otherwise. But what can I say? So, and this is what I wanted to tell you. And as always, guys, I really appreciate your support. And please, those who can support me please on Patreon, or buy me a couple of jack or two, and subscribe to my channel. And you know what? Have a nice Friday and have a nice weekend. I'll talk to you hopefully next week. Bye bye.